YouTube, this is Fidgen here at the Unplugged Woodshop. I thought it would be a good time to talk to you about a course I'm doing in July of 2015 in Somerset, England with the New English Workshop. For 5 days, what we're going to be doing is building my Sawyer's bench. An essential piece of kit that you really owe to yourself to build if you plan on doing any amount of hand sawing. Be it small dimensioning of parts to resawing and ripping and cross-cutting large timbers as you break them down to your own furniture projects in your own shop. I've seen people use jigsaws and circular saws as well, so even if you're not unplugged as I am, a saw bench can be a great piece of kit for your own workshop. So let me give you a quick tour around mine. The first thing you'll note about this one is it doesn't have 4 splayed legs. If you have 4 splayed legs, and you start sawing, and how many of us, I'm sure many of you who use hand saws to break down your furniture parts know this. You start off a cut nice and square and straight. By the time you get to the end, you've somehow drifted ever so slightly. Now why is that? Is it because you were in your mind worrying about sawing into the splayed leg on the side of your bench? Perhaps. Even if you weren't worried about sawing into your leg, the leg on the side of the bench, what I found was having that visual cue. If I had a splayed leg and I'm sawing over top of it, I have a cue and I can see that splayed leg kind of creeping out. And it's just a little cue, and just ever so slightly, maybe my wrist would twist a little bit. And I'm talking about a very small fractional margin, but it's just that much of a slight twist is enough to throw off a plumb saw cut. So the first thing I did when I designed this bench was I made this side at a 90 degrees to the top. And that enables me, as I'm ripping a piece like this big slab of maple I was just ripping, as I'm ripping a piece now, I have a visual cue of square and plumb just by eyeing down the side of this. There's no angled leg coming out from the bottom of my bench to distract me in any way. So it's actually it really elevates your sawing ability. The second thing I did on this bench, well, and probably the most notably, I suppose, is I split the top into 2 pieces. Instead of just having the traditional 1 plank on the top, having 2. And what that does is when I have a really special cut that I'm worried about perhaps it busting off or breaking, I can have my cut supported on both sides and rip down the center notch here. And that's really helpful when I'm dealing with either a special piece of wood like this where I don't want to damage my offcut, so it's supported, or in other times when I may be sawing really thin stock, and you know yourself, if you've ever sawn thinner material, it can vibrate and wiggle around on you. So having both sides of the cut supported is a real game changer. Lastly, is I added a removable saw fence. Now, I'd never seen a saw bench that had a fence on it. And this always kind of puzzled me, because when you're working on your bench, on your workbench, and if you're using a back saw, you always would just throw a bench hook on your bench and work up against a fence. Makes sense. So in my mind, I always thought, well, why don't saw benches ever have fences? So in the past, I would always be forced to hold my work and just freehand it, hold it with my knee, which can get hard on the knees. So by adding a fence now, I can just bring my work over to the fence, lean on it. Now the fence, as I saw, of course, the fence just really adds some stability and gives me somewhere to push my work against. And that, my friends, is the Sawyer's bench. It's a great piece of kit to consider for your own shop. The joinery is straightforward enough that if you're just getting into hand tools, this is a wonderful project to begin with. There's no pressure of, this isn't going to be a jewelry box for your mother-in-law for a Christmas gift, This is something for your workshop, so if things don't go exactly as you plan and you kind of, jig things up a little bit, it's totally okay. It's only going to be in the workshop and you're going to saw on it. So lots of freedom just to get in there, and even if you're already into hand tools and you haven't yet built yourself a saw bench, another great project to begin with. And on the further side of that coin is if you're already very established and you're using hand tools all the time and you've been using a more traditional style saw bench. I used a traditional style saw bench for years, and I always noticed a few little inconsistencies about my sawing, which turned out to be the thing that elevated my sawing and brought my sawing to the next level was just having a place to work. And we talk about this, having a decent workbench for doing your hand planing needs and your chiseling and all your furniture making needs. And sometimes the saw bench gets a little bit neglected. So just by adding a few design shifts in mine in this version, really elevated the design and really elevated my sawing skills. Hopefully you can join me next summer at the New English Workshop in Somerset, England, July 2015. I'm Tom Fidgen. This is the Unplugged Woodshop, and make every day a masterpiece.